talks, I feel, at this point, are warnings, really. You're warning about certain pitfalls or the way the system itself reinforces itself. You know, you can catch it, and then you basically, you're like a police artist. You can do a good composite drawing with the hopes that you show the people, and maybe they see it before they start looking from it, yeah? So, this idea of, if there's an identification as what you're not that believes it has the non-duality, yeah, and then some shit hits the fan and it tries to apply non-duality as a skillful means, it usually doesn't work well. Yeah, yeah. You can, so that which you're not can't use non-duality to get out of that which you're not. It just reinforces the being in. Really, seriously. And it's good to see this, because many, many times entertaining these ideas, we'll be looking from its effects. We will. It's subtle, so you don't even know you seeming in a way have been put in the glove, yeah? And you're thinking now the glove's the hand, and you're going to try to use I'm not a glove for the glove, really. And then, you know, glove trying not to be a glove is a lot of glove, as we know. Yeah? So, and the thing is, there's a lot of, you know, there can be intervals here, interruptions of this sort of way it goes, and it can be profound, you know, and there's it's when space gets a sense of space, you know, and then the narration of it is back as this, it gets addictive in a way. So the thing that you're not wants to get back, wants to be that high, but the high was predicated on you're not that, yeah. But that you're not that regroups and says, man, you know, I miss that high, and then it attempts to use non-duality to get back to non-duality, where you can't get back to what already is. It's just impossible, yeah? So it's worse in a way. It can be worse because now they have all the knowledge in the head, but it doesn't seem to be translating subtly the way they thought it would. And they had a hope that interlude would stabilize and it would affect them and they would get relief from them as them. And it hasn't worked, I don't feel, when I've watched people. And these were extreme examples, because the one lady, you know, you can have incredible displacement in a certain conditional situation that doesn't gain traction after you leave, because the head has time on its side, really. So the greatest peak experience over time can be eroded, seemingly. It can appear that something that was isn't anymore. Yeah, it can. It can appear anyway, because that's the magician's trick, is time. So either there's a desire for that which was a timeless insertion in time to become of time and stabilize, or there's a missing of it terribly, and therefore that which is in time wants to get back to that timeless moment, and then but in time. Yeah, they want to have it extend, and it's subtle, but it all feeds the Narcissus pond. Yeah, that water isn't flowing; it's feeding a pond where you're reflecting yourself in. Yeah. And it's tough to see when you're in that current. You got to hear it from somewhere else or get a whack or something. You're not going to get it from your own system that you're relying on. It's going to, tell you the pond's the ocean or whatever. But it's just the flow has gotten directed, so there's just a mirroring of you. So people will say, "Oh, I disappeared." I say, "Well, who's there to tell me that?" If you disappeared, there would be no report that you disappeared. Yeah, so you know what I mean? Oh, I had this long phase where I disappeared. Give me a break. You're telling me you disappeared. I mean, if there was a real disappearance, you wouldn't hear about it. You know what I mean? It wouldn't be an experience you had. Yes? And of course, as soon as the disappearance is claimed that's an appearance. This appearance gets used to promote an appearance. You see, you believe there's, I did anyway, innocently, unless they naively and ignorantly, I believed there were forbidden zones, that things would happen that would be untouched by anything that's happening, you know? And there's every, you know, where the lotus arises from is muddy, you know, there's always, yeah. So, and you can see, I didn't know the depths of my friend. I didn't know it, I just come there. And so he was joking, which is a good sign to me of mental health, you know, when you're joking about yourself. And I hadn't seen him do that for years, and then, you know, it's finito, you know, in a sense, whatever. So I really feel, and then in a way, then people want to give up non-duality. You know, non-duality is not doing for me what I wanted to do. That's why it's non-duality. If it would do what you want to do, it would be called your non-duality. There's no your non-duality. You fit yourself around that. You know, you can't fit it around you. It just doesn't work. I don't see it working that way. So watching it over the years and watching people and watching my own, you know, because the action figure, you don't understand in a sense. It's programmed with a stubborn reference point, yeah, and it's not going to issue a change in that as the system. It's just, that's like Albert Einstein said, you know, you can't go to that which is producing the problem for a solution. It's just, you can't go to the mental state for relief from the mental state. You have to do some action, you know, help someone or do something, run, or yeah, you can get away, but basically what's producing the seeming obscuration can't unobscure, yeah? It's like the original, like the third patriarch of Zen, guy who was supposedly just a peddler in a market. And he heard just one sentence of like the Lotus Sutra, I don't know what, one of them. And then he was working in the temple, and then the temple's ready to give, and I'm ruining the story, but it's vaguely this way. So the temple was, the old dude that was seemingly running it was passing on the bowl and everything to another guy. So they had almost like an exam, and the one guy said, who had been his oldest student, said, yes, Zen is like polishing the mirror, blah, 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 yeah, and then he was going to get, and the peddler guy just said, hey, there's no fucking mirror. There's no need to polish any mirror. And then the old dude gave him the bowl and shit. And then the other monks ran him out because, hey, you have never even lived here. You didn't do this, but you know what I mean? So yeah. Non-duality won't work as a structured, rigid dogma. It won't. There's no room for Pharisees in non-duality. You can't get stuck in the letter of the law and lose the spirit of the law. Yeah? Just seeing what you're not. So you can see what you're not, trying to use the knowledge of what it's not as what it's not. You can see it. You can see it do. You think in its little Olympics, hasn't done the triple somersault, whatever. It's done so many convoluted flips and gets a 10 from its own judges. You know? So it just, you know. But in fact, if the premise or the reference is securely locked in you, then that you's going to act as an obscuring agent to whatever you get in contact with. Really, it's going to obscure it. So, like the Course would say, you give everything all the meaning it has. Neuroscience says the observation distorts the observed. What? Apply that to now. It's not like happened in the laboratory. This is how it's happening. This is what's happening. We're the dreaming of this place. Not even this place. We're the dreaming of the dreaming. We're the dreaming of it. Yeah? Not a dreamt. We're not a little thing in it, or we're not in someone else's dreaming. We're the dreaming. Yeah, that's really our role here. and we're giving everything all the meaning it has. And you have to see that that's already rooted this idea of being Paul in place. And you're wasting time trying to convince Paul that it's not Paul. Just see you're not Paul. Don't waste any time, reading tons of books so that what you're not maybe intellectually gets, I'm not that. It doesn't go anywhere. Just books should be like an invitation, a whack. You see it, you read a little, and then things, then you just sit there and let it reverberate, because it's reverberating you out of the static reference. Your mind's just going, and then it sees, hey, maybe I'm not that, and then the direction of life can change. I call it like the horse is in front of the cart, and you'll know it. As the seeming cart, you'll know your position. Your position is a vehicle of expression, not a cause. It does well directed, but not directed. And it doesn't mean you get another person to direct you. It's being directed by that which is prior to thought. So the thought doesn't become the way you understand this place. Because if it is, it's going to be all right angles, and it's all going to be cause and effect, and whatever you see, you're going to try to find the cause of it all. And you miss the verbing by looking for a noun in there. You miss it. You miss the flavor of it. It's like getting a glass of the Colorado River, bringing it home and thinking you have the river, but you've lost the main essence of it, which is rivering. It's the water. The rivering is the movement of the water. The water itself, you lose its the flavor of it. So, yeah. And I've seen it. I have the opportunity of the seat assignment to sit and speak with a lot of people, a lot of different mindsets. And I've seen like the typical robberies of the mental state. I've been at a lot of scenes of the crime. So, like a reporter, I can see its movements, and it's not just good enough to think you understand the message. You have to see what's understanding the message, and the commonplace nonchalantness of an identification that's totally supported in time and with a lot of mental processes. I mean, it takes a whole lot for you to be convinced that you're a thing. It takes a whole fucking lot of energy and effort. Yeah, and time is the greatest part of the trick, because in the basis of the act of being identified, the mental state is in the act of being identified as a self. The mental states, let's say, thoughts, memories, perceptual interpretation. They're all rooted in thingness. You remember yourself as a thing, you're thought about as a thing, and you perceive things, this apparatus. So the apparatus is not like, a neutral, it will just get attracted by whatever. No, it's heavily weighted on the idea of thingness, yes, or nounness. And then it's confronted with a life that's verbing. Yeah, verbing. And of course, it doesn't see itself as a verb. It sees itself as a noun that's doing a lot of the verbs, or is being done to by the verbs, yes? But it doesn't see itself as verbing. And so this act of being identified as a noun just doesn't come up in a happenstance way. It's based on some foundations. The idea of time, the idea of claiming, yeah? So the mental state claims what's brought into its realm by conscious contact. Conscious contact is living here, really. It doesn't ever say that it implies you are what's conscious. It's just conscious contact. Conscious contact triggers the event through seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, touching, and then hearing thoughts. Yeah, that's what triggers it, and then the mental state arises later. Now later may only seem like a second or two, but it's later. Yeah, and so the mental state, the nouns are of time, and you would say like that the verbs are are in a timeless way. There's no end to them or beginning to them. They're just verbing. So there's not a dream, there's dreaming. Dreaming. There wasn't a point, and then there's the dream, and then there's going to be a not point with a not dream. There's just dreaming. Yeah, dreaming. So the mental processes, which our attention and interest seem to be been trained to go to, and because we're constantly hearing a narrative about day, yeah, constantly, and those narratives are derived from the claiming of verbing. So the verbing gets claimed to imply a noun. Now I believe in a humble way that Ramana Maharshi was implying that when he said, and he says it in a lot of different ways. If you read a lot of people who wrote different things about his teachings, which weren't many teachings, it was one. This idea is framed as the problem, or like the greatest mystery is reality, wanting to attain reality. It's the greatest mystery. How would reality ever want to be moved to want to attain itself? Well, there must be an action or an activity that's going on that reality seems, it appears to reality that it's forgotten it's real. Yeah, obviously. And now it's looking for what it really is to save it from what it's not, but it's trying to save it for what it's not. Yeah. Through the identification, it wants to recognize reality for itself. Yeah. All the while being reality. Yeah. So this is the fundamental thumb torture thing. Yeah. Now, if there was anything else, it would be very noble to try to attain reality. But if it's reality, it's sort of an act of obscuration, so to speak. So the reality blows the smoke and then tries to get through the smoke. And there's a mirror of its own reflection, but it thinks it's something else. So it's trying to get through the smoke, but it doesn't get that it's reflecting itself. If there isn't reality, and this is, you know what I mean? It's got this smoke, so it's trying, I see it, but it's not recognizing that it isn't. You know, because it's in a recognition of something else already. It thinks it's Paul. Yeah. So every time it gets a clear reflection that it's reality, it just misconstrues it. You know, oh, that free sample. I keep going. I got a taste. I got one drop of nectar. You know, and then it motivates you more and more and more. But you know, your arm's here holding the mirror, so you never close the distance because. You know, the whole system, yeah, so you're never going to arrive at where you already are. It's just impossible. It seems always to be out of my reach. No, it's in your reach, because that's what's holding you. But you know, so, all right, so he says this, and one of the interpretations or translations, it had the word pre in it, so pre to me is of time, yeah, so it says, there's a presupposing. So supposing, I supposed, I woke up and I supposed the store was open. I didn't call them and I drove there and it's closed. And I'm fucking surprised because I just assumed it was open, but I didn't check it out. Yeah, I just assume a lot, I assumed, I assume I have money in my account, but I don't have any money. I assume a lot. So there's a supposing, but it's pre. See, this is the movement in time. If you don't see the robbery, and the vehicle of the robbery is time, you're missing the robbery, really. You have to have the flavor of how it happens. It happens with time. Yeah. So there's a supposing, but it's presupposed. So there's supposing of a non-existent thing, obviously taken to be that which is existing, that wants to get salvation for itself. Yeah. Not from itself, but for itself. So it thinks it's in one condition, and that condition sooner or later is going to demand some kind of salvation from it, which is getting loaded or something. Maybe you'll realize I'm never going to be free from it, but I can be free now. And like the drug addict of my type is, I was willing to pay any consequence tomorrow not to feel uncomfortable now. So I was pretty much, I don't give a shit if this stabilizes. I just want a little relief from it, and then I'm just trying to keep getting the relief. So there's the presupposing of a non-existent thing, so there's a mistake, which is dualism, really. Yeah? The subjectiveness, which would be the subject, and the object have gotten sort of intertwined by the mental state's reaction. the mental state thinks there's a thing that's seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, touching. It pins it on the thing. And so then everything else it claims is attributed to the thing now. It's used to claim the conscious contact. Now thoughts are my thoughts, feelings my feelings, actions in this court, definitely my actions. And so therefore the bonding mechanism is in place. As long as the verbing's going on, the noun will be found in it, yes? So it doesn't care where the verbing is, in the temple setting or wherever, it doesn't matter. It's going to use it to imply a noun there. So meditation is an activity. The mental state will harvest the idea of being a meditator from it. Yes? So the more you meditate, the more you're the meditator. So how can you get out of that when you're in? It's doing exactly what he says in the next sentence. It says, all right, so there's a presupposing of a non-existent thing that wants to get salvation for the non-existent thing. And then it says your spiritual practices themselves are used to reinforce the non-existent thing. How can they destroy the non-existent thing? And then there's a big question, and I would think you should have about 50 pages of emptiness after that. Just sit there. Really. Let's not jump to page 44. Let's just sit there, just dot, 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 dot. Just sit there. All right? Because maybe that description of the crime fits you. Yeah, you'll be fitted. And you may be playing the policeman role, the thief role. They're both in cahoots with the crime. So maybe there'll be a hit. And then things can change, yeah? So you see it, all right, there's a presupposing of a non-existent thing, wanting to get salvation for a non-existent thing. And in this case, therefore, your spiritual practices, or whatever, your ethical practices, or your moral practices, yeah, are reinforcing the non-existent thing. How can they destroy the non-existent thing? You know, just he throws it up there. How can they do it? If they're being used for one intent, how can they be doing what you think is your intent? The mechanical intent is overriding your intent. So you believe you're the big honcho as this, so you think your intent the mechanical intent overrides your intent. So the mechanical intent is to use the spiritual practice to reinforce the identification as what you're not. Your intent is to use the spiritual practice to get out of it. I don't think yours is going to win. I think the mechanicalness is going to override you, because you're a mechanical idea derived from all that. So, yeah, I just don't see it. So, all right, so the presuppose, so this is how I saw it. I'm just going to describe the anatomy of the activity. So, the mental state claims what it comes in contact with. So the mental state claims seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, touching to imply a seer, a hearer, a feeler, a taster, a toucher. See? So you see this, just see it. It's so simple. Just see it. Conscious contact, seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, touching. It doesn't seem like there's much volition involved. And are you sweating from seeing and hearing and feeling? No. Yeah, it seems to be being it very, very naturally, because it isn't. Consciousness is conscious of things. It's not trying to be conscious of things. That's its nature. Yeah. So it's not exuding any effects of effort like sweating and trying. It's just, and there's no volition. You can have tons of opinions about what you didn't want to see after you saw it. Those opinions have no power blocking you from seeing it because you saw it already. See, so you come after. I don't know how many times you need to see it, So the mental state claims the seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, touching, which means the seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, touching is the basis. The mental state happens in time, arises and claims that to imply you're the one who's seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, touching. So that which comes after, that's being assumed or supposed, is pre-assumed to be before. That's how it does it. It's a weird little trip. So the product of the process says it's the one doing the process or being done to by the process. So after it comes off the conveyor belt, it starts bitching about what's been claimed to produce it or to imply it. Yeah, it's so weird. So now the noun is assumed, and then the noun feels guilty for selfing or or guilt, or proud for, I haven't been selfing that much today, whatever. But the selfing is being used to imply the self. And then when most people talk to me, they're talking from that. Well, it's already been in place, and now they believe they're selfing, or the selfing's driving them crazy. It's a perfect illustration of what we're trying to share. I wish we could have like a living book and see it, so that you could see in the act, all right, as soon as you get the idea of selfing, when you talk about it, you say, oh, I've been watching my cell phone, I'm in selfing all day. No, you see, that noun of the doership came after the selfing. It was presupposed, and now you have guilt about what you think you're doing when you're not doing it at all. The doing is being claimed to imply the doer now thinks it's doing it. It's worked, in a way. The magic trick is worked. You never see, all you see is the rabbit out of the hat. You assume it was in the hat. It was never in the hat. So now you think, oh, that was a great trip. He took the rabbit. You never saw the rabbit come out of the hat. It's just assumed that it was in the hat. Yeah? So this is the whole point. And now you got a fucking rabbit outside the hat running. You try to go. But basically, you missed what preceded it. Yeah? So if you don't see it, you'll be looking from the rabbit being outside the hat. If you see it, you'll see it. The magic trick never happened. So there's a relief, not afterwards, which is mostly what we are not seeking for, is relief for itself. But there's a relief before it. So you have a sense of okayness that had nothing to do with. And this basis is sound, and it's always available at all times. And it doesn't squint or diminish or expand. It's there. Just so there, not with any effort, and you didn't beckon it. There's no need for your role in it, because it's inherent, meaning it's always there. Yeah, it's not conditional. It's just always available at all times, right where you are, with really no requirement necessary unless you've made a list up. Yeah, and then hopefully, what will life do? Will erase some of the list, and then you'll think you finally arrived. And when you arrived, you'll have a deep realization on having never left. Yeah. So did you actually arrive? No. So as long as there's no arrival, you're thinking you're arriving. But when you arrive, it tells you never left. So did you arrive? Did you? Really? Did you arrive?
Who's on first?
Yes? No, you didn't arrive. So if you didn't arrive, because based on having never left, wouldn't that like change the square one on the Monopoly board? I would imagine you would see what's happening here in a different way. I would, because that's what's happened with me, with not much thought or effort. And there was no way I could possibly even imagine this was available, because you were imagining everything from a failed system that keeps a really, really rigid eye on possibilities, limits them incredibly, or puts them in time. Oh, I will be okay, or I was once okay. And there's, it just produces hope and nostalgia. But the fact is, the basis of what you are is totally okay right now. And whatever's going on, see, look at the sky, there's no clouds today. But yesterday there was tons of clouds. Is there any remnants of yesterday's clouds left on the sky? Does it show any marks of the cumulus that ran into it all day? No, because nothing ran into it. It's the space that allowed everything to appear in it, yet it's not affected by anything that appears in it. Do you think we could have that little idea of the sky if we weren't that? Do you think we could see that meaning in the sky if we weren't that? So when something wants to use non-duality as a skillful means, you don't have to try to stop. Just see it's not you. This has nothing to do with stopping. It's nothing to do with dieting or keeping or abstaining from something. You allow everything to appear, but when it appears, it implies to you you're not that. Instead of implying to you you're that. Yeah, just a shift. Yeah, you now see what you're not, and that seeing of what you're not is like the constant re-upping of what you are. Yeah. because here in activity, seeing is really seeing what it's not, and in that seeing it is implied to be what it is. And you give up the idea that you're ever going to arrive or experience it or have it or get stabilized in it, because it's nothing to be had. It can't be more stable than it is. It's always available at all times. Yeah? It's like all these things you're wishing upon it are attributes you would wish for this. Yeah? But you can't have those attributes as this. You see you're not this, and then there's a sense of what you are. Now it's clear. The little goose chase has been shown to be completely futile, and there's a stopping, and basically you get like rebooted, you know. Instead of keep trying to get the computer to get to the photos, you just turn it off, yeah, and then it'll go to wherever. Yeah. But it needs that reboot, in a sense. It doesn't, but yeah, you know what I'm trying to say. So yeah. And then you can hear about what you are, but I found it faulty because I was hearing about what I am as what I'm not. It didn't go anywhere. Yeah, it actually made it worse, because then I got left with a lot of concept. That which I am got left with concepts about itself. It's fucking crazy. Why would, you know what I mean? Where its highest achievement would be knowing what it is when it's being what it is. It just seems crazy to me. Yeah. So I want to know what I'm not. I do. Yeah. And see, there's a limited amount of knowledge. You don't need a lot of knowledge. All you need is just a critical mass of knowledge to hit you as, hey, I'm not that. Then it's just like redundancy. Yeah, you have all the knowledge you need of what you're not. Yeah, you understand what you're not. You experience it all fucking day. That's what's happening here. So you've got it all, and then that what you're not, yeah, triggers into I'm being what I am, in knowing what I'm not, in understanding what I'm not, in experiencing what I'm not. Yeah, I am always being what I am, and therefore the experience of what I'm not can't seem to change that, because they never could. Knowing what I'm not doesn't lead me there. Yeah, because it'll be like knowing what I'm not as what I'm not doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't. This whole message of like talking to Mike about the Buddha doesn't go anywhere. You talk to the Buddha about Mike, that goes. Yeah. At the same time, it can go either way. It can be going sucked up the ass of self, or get over the ass's head, and then what you are catches it, and it goes, wait a minute, I'm not that. And it's not like I'm not that. It's just I'm not that. It becomes a fact. Yeah. Everyone else says it's, oh, Paul, you're that. You stop arguing with people. Yeah. You just, I'm not that. That's all. That's all you need to know. And if it catches you, it isn't you it catches. I hope you start seeing that, because people still believe that which gets caught represents them. So when they go, oh, I got caught up in selfing, you didn't. An aspect of selfing got caught up in selfing, really. Yeah? I see it. People share, and then usually their narrative starts after but, so there's, oh, yes, I love these meetings, I just feel so, but, and then then their narrative replaces, yeah, and then it goes off, and all the time, and then you think you've been disconnected, that you believe you have the power to disconnect. Give me a fucking break. This whole idea that you could be out of a moment is totally based on an insane assumption of power that you don't have. This action figure has been in every surveillance tape that it was at. It was never, oh, I was literally gone. No, you weren't. It's all made up. It's all made up. But it still can't even get close to the context of here and now. There's nothing that appears here that's bursting through, has a big enough booster rocket to go to another here and now. There's no other here and now. There is in appearance, but there's no other here and now. Yes? It's not breaking through. You're not going to transcend this place as this. No freaking way. I mean, seriously. We were talking about it the other day somewhere in Toronto. I was on this retreat at a place in Marin. I used to call it the upper middle way. It's very high end, really good food. And so they offer retreats. So I did like a 3-week retreat. You could sort of name your time, 2 weeks. There was like a different lengths of time happening at the same time. And so they did a certain form of meditation. So I was there, and every day, did a lot of walking meditation. So, and it was in this hills area. And during, at 6 o'clock, they'd have dinner. They have 3 meals a day. Dinners were great. They had it sort of like you'd walk into this place and there'd be food on this table. And then before dinner, there'd be people like grazing, like very medicated cows, And then suddenly the bell would ring, and then there was sort of like a well-worn, path to the trough, and all the slow-moving cows would get in, start filtering into the place. It was great. So I got in there first this one night. So I'm walking in, you've been meditating, it's 13 hours basically. You haven't been, but it says you have. It's sort of like when you used to punch in for work. It says you've been working 8 hours, but I was very rarely working 8 hours when I was at work. the time thought, oh yeah, I was here, but I wasn't. They weren't accruing any value out of my presence. So, all right, it's 13 hours. So I get there first, and this night, it was like the 11th day I was there. This night they had ice cream out, first time. Yeah, I see the ice cream. So I go over, I sit down, and then I watch everyone walk in. And they're walking in with very sacred cows. And then they see the ice cream. I could see their head. The whole 11 days was out the window. And so some of them got some ice cream immediately, brought it to their dinner, and then got the dinner because they were afraid there wouldn't be any left. And all these strategies just started happening, and their gait started moving faster. They moved quicker. It was like, the thing was gone already. 11 days. It's just one little Briars. You're swimming up a strong current. This doesn't want to sit for 13 hours. It wants a comfortable seat. Can you imagine? Do you ever see the Zendos in the beginning? They're beautiful. Beautiful. A lot of light coming in, and there's little black, mat islands, little thing with a round cushion, nice space. And then, after 5 days, there's just tons of cushions trying to lift your left cheek off the fucking thing because it's the center of the universe now. Why the fuck did I sign up for this? Because the subjectiveness signed up for it, but the object's there. Yes. Yeah. So I just don't. I think there's maintenance. Spirituality, I think, is a good form, a very high form of maintenance of physical and mental and emotional. But I don't think, if I'm sitting for 13 hours a day, I think I'm going somewhere, I do. I wouldn't, I'm not doing that for blood pressure. I'm thinking I'm going, like I'm gonna be there. So I just do. So I don't think we're a chariot of the gods. I think we're disposable. So you find what works, like if you have, this has alcoholism, it needed a way of life. I wasn't looking for it, but life decided to provide me a way of life that's kept me on the straight and narrow for 31 years. Yeah, pretty fucking good. Struck me sober, which was mind-boggling. Haven't had a strong feeling or an urge to get loaded for 31 years. That's mind-boggling to me. Because no human power could produce that. My mother couldn't, the state couldn't, I couldn't, yet something occurred and that radioisotope was removed. What the hell? So I saw, I suddenly realized that something could do for me what I can't do for myself. Let's expand on that idea. Why not? So then I went through all the spirituality I needed to go through, and I saw something. I didn't have words for it, but I saw it. And then it was explained in other writings, like Huang Po and Ram Maharshi. And those shoes fit, and I wore them. And I just walked around, and my mind entertained the futility of using itself to find itself, really. And I really, the idea of the Buddha being used by the Buddha to seek the Buddha was clear to me. And I realized that most talks are talking to you about what you are instead of talking to what you are about you. I just think it's misdirected. I do. So from that point on, I've never changed the talk because I don't believe if you don't see this, you'll be looking from its effects. I just humbly believe that. So, and I'm open to get new directives. You know, like maybe put a fitness video out or something. Nothing's happening. Just keeps on showing up, and I've watched so many people, and I've seen the same robbery wearing different outfits, you know. But it has a limited amount of movements, the selfie. There's not that many really. And if you can see its MO in one crime, you can pretty much rely on it being the same MO. Yeah? So the mental state claims the verbing to imply a noun, and then gives you a constant 24/7 narration of life based on it's happening to you, really. That's what it does. So you had experiences, and when you were young, you were probably in a state of life was happening. And then it's suddenly, slowly, the attention and interest was taken from that and put into a narration of life that it's happening to you. Yeah? And then you were running around doing whatever, thinking, you know, a lot of people assumed if I had the right experience, it would change everything. So people had tons of peak experiences, did LSD, did that, this. But basically the source code never seemed to be changed. Yeah, because the source code can adapt. Whatever happens, it can imply it's me that it's happened to. It's pretty damn good at that. And it's so fast in time, I just don't believe there's any process in time that will get you before it to see it. You gotta see you're not that, and then the timelessness becomes available. Yeah, that which always is the non-moving state that can see the moving. Yeah. Yeah. So. All right. Any questions? No. Right. Fantastic. Coffee will come sooner. We'll pass the basket, eh? And if